The Law of One, session 14. The questioner asks, in the previous session, you said that the highest second density strives toward third density, which is self-awareness. You also said this happens through higher second density forms being invested in by third density beings. Could you explain? Ra says pets, as well as through religious practices that personify and send love to natural second density beings in their group form. Maybe one example could be that of cows in Hinduism. The questioner, when the earth was second density, how did these beings become so invested? Ra says, there wasn't the previous type of investment spoken about. There was instead, in his words, the simple third density investment, which is the line of spiraling light calling distortion upward from density to density. And that this process takes longer than the previous one. When I explored this in the previous session, in session 13, I did not understand what they meant. But here, the explanation is a little bit clearer to me. And it seems that instead of moving through space, from like dimension to dimension, it's moving instead in consciousness. So from base consciousness and striving upward to intelligent infinity. So that is one minor correction from session 13. He goes on to say that this process takes longer than the previous one, though. And then the questioner, what did man look like in the second density? Ra says they would have been quite similar, but they went through a different process. So they would have been quite similar to the third density looking man. He says that it was interrupted by the Martians, and that the Martians were genetically adjusted, and so the difference was very noticeable. Instead of there being a gradual shift, there was second density and then a snap up to the Martians in third. So kind of a gap in that evolutionary process. And then in Ra's words, this has nothing to do with the placement of the soul. This has only to do with the circumstances of the influx of those from that culture. I don't understand what he means there. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that one. If you have some ideas, again, welcome to share in the comments. The questioner, can you tell me the history touching only on the points of development that occurred within the past 75,000 years when our third density evolutionary process began? Please share any particular points where attempts were made to increase the development of this third density. So Ra says that the first attempt was 75,000 years ago, and that was when the Martians arrived. The next was 58,000 years ago in Lemuria. Next, 13,000 years ago, when intelligent information was offered to Atlantis through the use of crystals. The next, 11,000 years ago, in Egypt, when they came. Next, 7,500 years ago, in South America, there was an attempt, but the pyramids of these cities were inappropriately used, and so they left. I do have a question mark around pyramids here. I don't know like the timeline of when other pyramids around the world were built. So I cannot speak from that point of knowledge. The question is just who built the other pyramids around the world? And how did that come to be basically? And did it have any relationship to this, to Ra? And then next, 3,000 years ago, also in South America, there was a landing. Next, 2.3 thousand years ago in Egypt, but they later corrected this to 3.3 thousand years ago. It wasn't 2.3. So that error was made a few times in this session, but I'll just keep correcting it as we go along, just so that you're aware that Ra made the error of 2.3, but that he later corrected it to 3.3. And then in Ra's words, we have never gone from your fifth dimension and have been working in this last minor cycle of 25,000 years to prepare for harvest. You know, it feels a bit exciting to think about that, you know, that there is this support. It lands the kind of importance around stepping into ourselves fully, if you know what I mean. You know, like there are these souls that need you to be who you came here to be, you know? Like if there's a call, can you answer the call? Can you drop the fear? Can you act despite of the fear or despite the fear? It feels really empowering. Like whoever's listening to this, you know, you're probably a part of this stuff too. But yeah, just exciting to think about the shift that's happening globally, and that there are beings here to raise the consciousness of the planet, and that many of them have a niggling inside, but they have not fully kind of owned it yet. I haven't fully owned it yet, but in the process. Moving on. The questioner: was the visit to Egypt 11,000 years ago the only time you walked the earth? Ra says, correct. Questioner: in an earlier session, you mentioned that the pyramids were built to ring the earth. How many were built? So they speak a little bit more about, you know, if the pyramids are ringing the earth, then they cannot just be in one place. But they didn't speak in an earlier session about this, and I can't remember what, you know, if this comes up in a later session. They also don't mention in the session exactly where the pyramids were. But we'll move along together. Ra says that there were 6 balancing pyramids and 52 others built for additional healing and initiatory work. The questioner: what is a balancing pyramid? Ra says, imagine all the force fields of the earth in a precise geometric web. The way that I kind of imagine this geometric web is like the ley lines. I'll pop a picture up. Energies flow into the earth from magnetically determined points. I'm not sure if those points would be like where 2 ley lines kind of cross each other. I'm just throwing ideas out. Because of growing misunderstandings of the law of one, the planets were seen to have the potential for imbalance. Balancing pyramids were equipped with crystals to balance this energy. These pyramids help to draw and distribute the appropriate balance from the energy entering the Earth's electromagnetic centers. I really took some time to try to understand this one. I also tried to create a number of images on AI, and they were disastrous, so I gave up on that. But I do kind of feel like it might be related to ley lines. I also asked ChatGPT if what Ra said, as he said it, could be connected to ley lines, and ChatGPT says yes. I also asked if the pyramids were positioned on specific ley line intersections. Again, it said yes, and then it explained that there are many researchers and sacred geometry enthusiasts that believe this for pyramids and other ancient monuments. Of course, it's ChatGPT, so check the source. Moving on, the questioner. So all of these visits over the past 75,000 years were for the purpose of giving us an understanding of the law of one, and in this way allow us to progress through 4th, 5th, and 6th densities. This was to be of service to the earth, ? The pyramids were also used for giving the law of one in their own way, ? Am I correct so far? Ra says correct to the limits of the precision allowed by language. Questioner. Does the balancing refer to the individual who is initiated in the pyramid, or the physical balancing of the earth on its own axis in space? Ra says individual initiation and for balancing the planetary energy web. How I imagine this is, if there's an influx of positive or negative energy in one place, for example, that the pyramids would redistribute that throughout the globe. That was what I imagined, but it's not what Ra explained later. He does mention, as just above, was that for that it was used for initiation as well as balancing the planetary energy web, but he doesn't speak more deeply about balancing the planetary energy web. So I still have a bit of a question mark next to that. Anyway, he goes on to say that the other pyramids are not placed properly for earth healing, but for the healing of the mind, body, spirit complexes. And that it came to their attention that our density was going through a premature aging process. So they came to basically help so that our third density people would have more time in each incarnation to have a fuller opportunity to learn, teach the ways of the law, the ways and laws of the primal distortion of the law of one, which is love. So basically, we're dying too young, and because of that, we're not having an opportunity to mature and to actually live and apply and learn and teach love. Yeah. The questioner, is this correct? The balancing pyramids were to increase the lifespan of entities so that they could gain more wisdom of the law of one. Ra says, correct. They were more numerous and used exclusively for the above purpose and the teach learning of healers to charge and enable these processes. See, they don't talk about the distribution of that energy or the redistribution of that energy around the globe. Moving on. The questioner, George Van Tanzel built a machine called the Integratron. Can it work for the purpose of increasing lifespan? Ra says it is incomplete and won't work for that purpose. Questioner, who gave George the info? Ra says there were two contacts. The first was the Confederation, and then the Orion group stepped in. So the Confederation withdrew because George's mental and emotional state shifted. So they were concerned that if they continued on with the communication process, it would become problematic and cause more problems or trouble than anything else. So they withdrew. But because George was open, the Orion group stepped in and basically continued to share that information with him. Even though he was confused, he was still devoted at heart to service to others, or to serving others. The questioner asks, would it be of any value to people at present to complete the machine? And Ra says that the harvest is now, so there's no reason at present to try to lengthen our lifespan. It's best to encourage others to seek the heart of self, for this which resides in the violet ray the violet ray energy field will determine the harvesting of each mind-body-spirit complex. Don't waste your time trying to live longer. Focus on what's going on inside your heart and inside your mind, because the harvest is now. The questioner. Going to the start of the cycle 75,000 years ago, after 25,000 years, how many were harvested? So basically 50,000 years ago. Ra says none. Questioner, what about the end of the next 25,000 year cycle, which was 25,000 years ago? Ra says that it began in the latter portion of the second 25,000 year cycle, and that some individuals found the gateway to intelligent infinity, that the harvest was extremely small and it consisted of individuals who had an extreme desire to serve others that were repeating the major cycle. So those decided to remain in the third density, although they could at any moment leave this density through the use of intelligent infinity. The questioner. In the harvest 25,000 years ago, the entities that could have been harvested to the fourth density stayed here in service to the planet's people? Question mark. Ra, correct. So there was no harvest at that time, but there were those who were harvestable. The questioner. So for the last 2.3 thousand years, which is actually 3.3 thousand years, you've been actively working to create as large a harvest as possible at the end of the 75,000 year cycle? Question mark. What are the reasons for doing this? Ra says, I speak for the social memory complex Ra. We came to aid you. Our efforts were perverted, if you remember from an earlier session in Egypt. Our desire is to eliminate as much as we can the distortions caused by those misreading our information or guidance. The general purpose of the Confederation is toward the primal distortion of the law of one, which is service. If you can imagine being one being, like a body, would you ignore a pain in your leg or a bruise on your skin or a cut which is festering? He says, no, there's no ignoring a call. And then in his words, we, the entities of sorrow, choose as our service the attempt to heal the sorrow, like the pain of the physical body. It actually, when I first read through this and made my little notes, it really made me feel so sad. I started to feel a little teary just reading that. And as I read it again, I feel this deep sadness. Also for the knowledge that there's always been support. If you've been through any kind of dark night of the soul, then you know how jarring it is, how awful it is, how alone you feel. And to know that you were never actually ever alone. In that moment, it doesn't feel like you're connected to anything, right? It's not like you can call on your guides and feel that kind of comfort. So it wasn't like that for me. I don't know if you guys have experienced like a dark night where you still felt connected. For me, it was very, very isolating. And it's just really kind of touching to think that this deep sorrow that is experienced by earthly beings, by these ego selves, is heard and it's responded to. And something as big as this is being done about it. It's really beautiful. Anyway, the questioner, what density is Ra? Ra says 6th density with a strong seeking towards 7th. Our harvest will be in approximately 2.5 million of your years. It is our desire to be ready. The questioner, do you get ready by providing the best service you can? Ra, correct. We offer the law of one, the solving of paradoxes, the balancing of love-light and light-love. Questioner, how long is one of your cycles? Ra, 75 million years. Questioner, do you work with any other planets at this time? Ra, no, only Earth. How do you normally share the law of one, especially over the past 2.3 thousand years, which is 3.3 thousand years? Ra says through channels like Kala, but mostly the channels feel inspired by dreams and visions without conscious awareness of our identity or existence. This group has undergone specific training, this group referring to Kala and the two guys, specific training that enhances their ability to recognize specific vibrational sources of information, and that this is crucial for maintaining accuracy and clarity. The questioner, when you contact these entities in their dreams, I assume they must first be seeking in the direction of the law of one. Ra, correct. For example, the entities in Egypt were in a state of worshipping various portions of the Creator. We managed to contact one person oriented towards the one. Questioner, who was responsible for transmitting the book? I can't pronounce this word. It's spelled OAHSPE. And then Ra, one of the Confederation's social memory complexes, whose idea it was to use some of the known Earth's history from our religions in order to reveal aspects of the law of one. This information buried in this book has a deeper understanding of love and light. I've personally never heard of the book, but I am intrigued. So yeah, the spelling OAHSPE. Questioner, who gave the Urantia book? URANTIA book. Also not familiar with this one. Ra, a group of discarnate entities from your inner earth planes, and this material was not passed by the council. The questioner, who spoke through Edgar Casey? Ra, no entity. Questioner, where did he get the information from that he channeled? Ra says, we've explained before that the infinite intelligence is brought into intelligent energy from eighth density or the octave. Edgar used this gateway to view the present, which is not the continuum you experience, but the potential social memory complex of the earth. And the term that you use and that you are familiar with is Akashic Records or the Hall of Records. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this session. I do actually find my energy shift quite significantly from the start of recording through the middle and to the end. I just wanted to kind of, note that at the end of this. Wishing you guys a beautiful evening and morning if you're listening to this in SA. And I'll see you guys soon on the next one. Much love.